Hi, Don Giannetti with this free class on using a light meter here at Udemy. And we're going to talk a little bit about ambient light here in the shade. We're shooting a little pot with some colorful flowers on these terracotta tiles. So I took a reading here, we're in the shade of the porch on my front porch. Took a reading and found 2.8, 100 ISO, 1/25th of a second. Okay, that gives us a starting place. Now, that didn't appeal to me, so I did something I normally do, and I don't like the way concrete or asphalt or anything looks. I wet it down, makes it darker, makes it more reflective, and so since it's more reflective, it captures more of the sky and the darkness. Making something wet generally makes it darker. In this particular case, it certainly did. So that's our first shot here, and I wanted to just to show you as we go down in progression, and that was the test shot. Make sure everything was right. I didn't like the angle, so now we start the progression here. It's a hundredth of a second, and everything looks pretty good. We're going to go to 125th of a second. Starts getting a little darker. Third of a stop difference. Now we're going to go to 160th of a second. Another third of a stop. Now we're at 1/200th of a second. Now we're a full stop underexposed. Okay, notice how deep and rich everything is here. And then one more, 1/250th of a second. What I'm saying is, none of these are wrong. None of these are wrong. Whatever you like. It doesn't really, it's whatever you like. So we go darker here as we progressively go darker, like this. And then I thought, let's add a strobe. Okay, so when I put the strobe on, even though the strobe is on 1/64th power, there's enough ambient spread from the strobe that it's going everywhere and enlightening the entire shot. So I moved it down one stop to this. So now our flowers match the other flowers, and there's our strobe light coming here. I want you to watch, pay special attention to the flowers here as we go from 100th of a second. I'm sorry, we're starting here. 100th of a second, 1/25th of a second, 1/160th of a second, 1/200th of a second, 1/250th of a second. Do you see that? The flowers, the yellow flowers, the edge of this thing stays pretty much the same. It's constant all the way through. Very slight change. But the background, where the strobe is not hitting the background, becomes darker and darker and darker. That's because the strobe is a constant here. The strobe is a constant. We also have, because we're working at such a very open aperture at 2.8 and f4, we also have a lot of ambient light that's creeping into our shot. So even though we are at this point a stop and a third underexposed, 1/250th down to 1/100th of a second, a stop and a third underexposed, it's still not black up there, nor should it be. We have plenty of ambient to keep that filled in. So the question is, how do you want your subjects to look in the ambient world? Slightly strobe lit like this? Or deeply strobe lit like this? It's all a matter of controlling the ambient. That's why I always say first find the ambient. Once you know how you want the rest of the world to look, in other words, you shot it like this. Let's go all the way back, shall we? When you were shooting these, you got to this one and you said, I like that ambient world. I like everything about it but the flowers. I don't like the flowers. They're too dark. This thing's too dark, it's lost everything, but I love that really dark area. Well, that's great. We come over here and we tune it right down to the 1/250th where you liked that dark area, and then we bring our strobe in to match. The aperture stays the same. The f-stop is the same. We've just darkened this with our shutter speed. Conversely, let's say you did these exposures and you say, well, I really like this. I like it all nice and open and airy. I just want to have a little feeling of the light hitting those flowers. Just maybe a hazy sun. Okay, that's great. You come over here, we'll go back through it here, and we get to this one here, right here, and now you have that sort of soft hazy sun hitting the flowers because there's still lots of ambient light. The shadow isn't very dark up here compared to, look how dark the shadow is, and that's all shutter speed. That's all shutter speed. We have not touched the aperture. The aperture has to remain the same because the amount of power coming from the strobe at the distance it is keeps these flowers pretty much the same. In this particular shot, I thought this was kind of cool. We've got the strobe light lit up on the little casing of flowers here. We got this little whatever you call it, water bucket sitting up here against the blue sky. The strobe is on here correctly. Now notice this shadow here. The shadow's here. It's matched. We have matched the strobe F16 for F16. Now what we're going to do is we're going to shut the shutter speed down from 1/100th to 1/125th to 1/160th to 1/200 to 1/250. Notice as we get darker and darker with our shutter speed, this gets darker, this gets darker, and this slight shadow, which is being built up so much from the bounce of this light here, which is ambient light, gets removed as we get darker because the strobe light is just hitting this and everything else is controlled by the shutter speed. So you can, once you've got this set where you want it to be, then you can play with your shutter speed any way you want. That's why I say find the ambient. If that's what you want the sky to look like, then you've got your exposure. You don't have to touch your camera again. You've got your shutter speed and your aperture. You've already decided this is what I want my world to look like. Now if we'd shot this without the strobe, obviously this bucket wouldn't look too good. It would be kind of dark like that. The strobe is what lit it up and the flowers. So once you have your exposure done with your incident light meter, then you simply bring the flowers in, and I just put the meter right here with it, the sun hitting it just like the bucket is here, and brought my strobe in until the distance and power gave me F16, and then I just left it alone because this image is all shot at F16. All we're doing is changing the shutter speed. So I hope that gave you a little bit of an idea how to use the strobe outside and what balancing for ambient is. You'll find more on my other two classes that I teach here. One is portraiture with simple tools, and the other one's natural light fashion and beauty photography. So look them up. Look here on Udemy. Just do a keyword search for Giannetti, Giannatti, and you'll find the other shows. So I'm glad you came along. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I'm glad you're here.